Hi, folks, it's Keith, Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor, Quebec. Here today with another quick blog or vlog, whatever you want to call it, looking at some issues that face new Morse code operators, new CW operators. So today we're going to be looking at what do you do when you make a mistake, when you have an error. Now we're talking about when you're sending, not when you're copying. So how do you show a correction? How do you make a correction? This is something we're going to look at. And there are different options open to you. Now, this video came about primarily because three things happened all within the space of about 48 hours or so. Number one, I had an email from a new op who asked if I actually did the eight dits, right? The eight dits when I made a mistake. And of course, that is the standard procedure. That is the recognized procedure, if you want, or protocol to correct a mistake. 8 quick dits. However, I will say, if I listen to people sending it, and you hear a lot of these in POTA, especially in the a lot of new operators trying their first contacts on POTA. So you hear a lot of dits when people screw up whatever it is they're sending. I'm not always hearing eight. I'm sometimes hearing five, sometimes six, not hearing the eight. So if you're going to use that process, make sure you get it right. I think that's something that we all need to focus on a little bit. Make sure we do it correct. I also had a discussion with a new operator who has made quite a few contacts, I guess. And the point she was making was that she's embarrassed every time she has to send that, and she's reaching the point where I guess you start to think to yourself, you're never going to get this right. You're never going to be good at Morse code. So why bother? Why not just quit? That constant sending of the eight dits when you make a lot of mistakes. And I have to say that may have been part of my issue back in 1990. And of course, that was the days of the American novice bands. Lots of people at 5 and 10 words a minute sending awful code. And I'm sure probably myself included when I started. So there were a lot of people making error messages. And I think my making them turned me off because I just got too embarrassed by it. And then, of course, got rid of Morse code and never went back to it until a couple of years ago. So there's my story. And so that was part of the discussion. People getting embarrassed, new operators getting embarrassed by constantly sending that. And then, of course, in LICW, and again, I always say I teach a beginner's level there. Howard, one of the co-founders of the club, had given a presentation to the instructors, which he does roughly every 2 weeks. And he was talking about making mistakes and a few other things. How do you handle busted calls and so on? And that video, if you look on the LICW YouTube channel, you'll see his video where he's talking about some of his suggestions or thoughts on the matter, what his opinion is. So what are we going to do? Well, we all make mistakes. I think this is something that all new operators have to get through their head. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to make a lot of them. If the other operator knows that you're new, they're not going to care. If you let the other operator know that you're QRS and so on, so you're going to be sending slower and everything else, there's the first sign to an operator that, well, maybe there'll be a few mistakes. We really don't care. What we care about is that you are trying and that you will stay with CW and that you won't quit. So don't get embarrassed when you make a mistake. Hang in there. It's almost like a rite of passage. A new CW operator has to get out there. He's got to go through that adrenaline rush. Um, then you start sending choppy code, too fast code, whatever. And then eventually, after you make a few contacts, you settle right down. And then it really becomes fun. So don't go getting upset. And above all, don't quit just because you're making mistakes. Try writing a paragraph in French or German or Spanish. Do you think you're going to do it without making a mistake? Probably not. You can probably make quite a few. Morse code is no different than that. So I'm hearing a bunch of different things, and this is just, again, my opinion, what I'm picking up. On POTA, yes, there are a lot of people still using the standard 8 dits when they make a mistake. It's very obvious when they've made a mistake. What I am hearing, though, is people cutting the 8 dits down. So you might get, I'm going to say 6 dits. I don't always hear the 8 dits. So that's something, if you're going to use that type of approach, make sure you send the correct number of dits. I'm also hearing in some of the contacts where the information is not urgent. In other words, I'm sending my name as an example, Keith, and maybe I screw up, I don't know, the T. What will happen is very often that operator will simply pause and then he'll go back and resend my whole name again, or I will resend my whole name again. So I'm hearing that sort of a pause and then a resend. If it's something really important, like let's say the RST or maybe even your call sign, I'm hearing them resend it twice. Works for me. I don't mind them doing that. So that's something to think about. In the other more informal, I'm going to call it a rag chew, where people are just extending information. It's not a contest, it's not a formal exchange of membership numbers. I'm hearing operators just keep sending. So, did they not realize they made a mistake? They probably know they did, but they also know that if it's just a casual conversation, the other operator on the other end may very well just be able to go, oh, yes, okay, made a mistake on that one. I know the word and continue. So that's also out there too. But I thought just for fun, what we would do here, I want to go back to the author of the CW Way of Life and see what he says. I love his book, and he's got just a ton of information in there that pertains to Morse code. And let's see what he says and see if any of what he suggests is something that a new operator can use and maybe even avoid a little bit of embarrassment. Now, Chris Radowski, in that wonderful book he wrote called The CW Way of Life, now that is available on Amazon, also available on Kindle as well. Excellent book, so much history about Morse code, but also operating procedures and so on. So I'm going to show you one of the clips I've got essentially of one of the pages he has where he's showing different things that you can do. And he has 3 different examples of what you can do when you make a mistake. So let's take a look at that page and we'll see what he says. All right, if you look at the screen here, you can see some of the abbreviations that he has given for an error message. So he's got the HH, sort of that, the 8 dits, which is, as he put, standard Morse code. He has the question mark. In other words, the operator would send a question mark. Or you've got the one I think that I hear a lot of people using now, and she calls it the oops, 3 E's sent, and then they correct whatever it is they were doing. So those are 3 more options other than, you know, simply ignoring your error, which a lot of people, of course, do not like to do. They like to make sure what they're sending is absolutely 100% correct or as close to 100% as they can make it. So there you go, just a few ideas. Now, just to review some of the options that are open to you. Number one, you can always ignore unless it's an important mistake and then go back and correct it. Number two, the HH or the 8 dits, which is more or less standard procedure. You can also send a question mark. That would be number three. Number four would be the 3 E's, dit, dit, dit. And number five would be to simply pause and then go back and resend the word that you had messed up or call sign or whatever it happened to be. So some interesting options. And I think a lot of this will also depend on who you're in communication with. If you're sending something exceptionally important, maybe coded groups for the military or something like that, obviously you're going to have to get that right. And you're going to have to flag that you sent a mistake. If you're just having a casual conversation with someone, there's lots of other options here. You can pick one of those options. I don't think the other guy's going to mind which one you do. But again, above all, We are looking at accuracy. Accuracy trumps speed, every time. And of course, just a reminder for all of those new operators, you are going to make mistakes, lots of them. We all make mistakes, even veteran operators make mistakes. The idea is don't let it discourage you from continuing with Morse code or continue studying it or continue to get on the air. Mistakes are part of learning. You get better as you make them because then you learn from them. Hopefully, this helps. Anyways, if you like this video, if you found some of it useful and helpful, thanks for watching. I hope you subscribe, like, and share. YouTube always likes when you do. It's Keith, Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec, wishing you a great day. 73.